In today's lesson, we're going to talk about Katakana, which is the second writing system that we're going to learn, and then we'll continue on with some grammar, although not much. So, if you've been with me from the start, then we've already learned hiragana, and hopefully by this point you're somewhat comfortable using it. You don't have to have mastered it yet, but you're decently comfortable using and reading hiragana. So next we're going to learn katakana. So katakana is mostly used to indicate that a word is of foreign origin and it's not native to Japanese. So loan words are the most common use, but it could also be used, for example, to write someone's name if they have a name that's not Japanese. Sometimes it's also used to italicize or emphasize a word. So you might write it in katakana even if there is a way to write it in hiragana, just because it stands out and is read differently. And then things like onomatopoeia or something where it's not an actual word, you might use katakana again just to suggest to someone that this is not an actual word, it's say this phonetically, it's meant to sound this way. So we'll start with the vowels. The vowels are again a, I, u, e, o. I'm going to go a little faster because I'm going to assume that you do know the Japanese sounds already, and so the focus is just going to be on writing them in this new script. Okay, so start with a. A is like this and this. A. So you can think of it as like a stylized capital P. And I'll do it again one more time. A. Next is I. I, you write the stroke downwards first, and then the line down. So important that you bring the stroke down from the top, and that you do the top stroke first, and then the vertical line. This is I. U has 3 strokes. So you do the stem that's at the top first, then you do this horizontal line, and then this is 1 stroke. So I'll do that one again. Do the stem, do this line, and then this. Next is E. E is pretty much the capital letter I. Write it this way. If you can, keep the top stroke a little shorter than the bottom stroke, but they don't have to be too different. So you don't have, basically, right? Pretty natural. I know that when I write the English letter I write it like this. But the katakana, you definitely top stroke, then this, then this. Then finally we have O. O is this line, then this line, so you've made a plus. Then from this intersection, draw a slightly curving outward line. And that's O. So do it again. Basically you draw a plus, but it's not centered. And then from this point you draw a curved line that goes upwards. So this is the ka set again. So it would be ka, ki, ku, ke, ko, and then dak then used exactly the same way as in hiragana. So ga, ki, ku, ke, and ko. And you might have already noticed some similarities to certain hiragana letters for some of them. That is a convenience that might help you remember those particular characters. In fact, there's at least one that are exactly the same, so that helps. But the rest of them are slightly different. That's because hiragana are adapted from cursive kanji writings, and katakana are from block letter kanji simplified. So we'll do ka first. Ka is this shape and then the vertical line. So it's pretty much how you would have written the hiragana ka. In hiragana you would have done this, so that extra stroke goes away, and then write it a little more square rather than very rounded, although it should still be understood. Just to emphasize the difference that this is katakana, so it looks different. Square it off a bit. That should help. So that's ka. And then again, dak then makes it ka. Next we have ki. So I'll remind you that in hiragana, ki looks like this. It's just that in katakana. Rather than doing the whole shape, you just get to simplify it with the line. So I'll do that again. It's basically the first line, second line, and then a diagonal through it. You can think of it as like the not equal to sign in mathematics, somewhat similar, although the slash comes in the opposite direction there. So yeah, and then you could angle these up a little bit so they're not perfectly flat, but somewhat like this. There you go. So that's ki, and then dak then makes it gi. Next we have ku. Ku is first do the outer line, and then you do the inner line. So ku, pretty simple. First stroke, second stroke. And dak then makes it ku. Next is ke. Ke looks similar to ku, but I'll point out the difference. Ke has 3 strokes. This is why stroke order helps a lot. So ke is, the outer stroke is the same. You draw a horizontal line, and then from the middle of this, you bring this down. So if you remember ku was like this. Ke is like this. So you can sort of see this part is different. So ke again, first stroke, second stroke, third stroke. And then you can add dak then to make it ge. And then finally we have ko. So ko is 2 strokes, even though it might look like 3. You have this shape first, which is like the Arabic numeral 7. And then you draw this line. And you notice I've drawn it, a little higher than basically meeting at the bottom exactly. In a simplified version of this, you can just have it exactly matched like that. But I prefer to have it just slightly raised above the bottom, because that matches how it looks in the printed version. And then adding dak then to make it go. So now you can see this one, and you should be able to spell this. Coco uses katakana for her name because her name is the English name Coco using C's, rather than the hiragana word koko as in here. So writing it using katakana, make sure that it doesn't get confused for the hiragana word koko here, and it also conveys the fact that it's a foreign name. And so the way that you would write koko, fairly simple. Ko, ko. Alright, so we can talk about the sa set now. So you have sa, shi, su, se, so, and za, ji, zu, ze, zo. So if you remember from hiragana, it's the same thing. This is basically shi and ji. Same thing, that's the palatalization. So it's the same character, it's just written with a different script. That's all. Alright. And then I want you to pay special attention to she and so, because we're going to see characters that look extremely similar to those later. So when you write them, make sure to be taking extra care to write it the right way, just so that when you draw them out later, they don't look confusing. Alright. So sa first. Sa is horizontal line, vertical line, and this. This might remind you of the hiragana se, but that was like this. So it's sort of inverted. Do this one first, and then you do this one. And then duck them to change it to za. So now we have she. So she, you do these two lines, and then from the bottom, draw this upwards. Yeah, let me draw it again, probably better. So you want to keep it closer near where this part is, and then you can go out that way. Right? Actually, let me angle these lines a bit more. That helps, I guess. The important thing is, right, if you look at the printed version, it looks sort of like a face angled upwards, right, looking in this direction. So if I drew it better, maybe that would be more apparent. Let me draw these a little flatter. Do you see it now? So it's like a face. And then you could add dak then to it to change it to G. And the reason this is important is because later we'll learn tsu. And tsu looks like this. So she and tsu, they look very similar. And they're probably easiest to tell the difference in the printed version. So I'll do it one more time. With she, you draw the upper eye, if you think of it as a face first, then you draw the second eye, and then starting from the bottom, draw this upwards. Yes, they draw it like this. Anyway, she with that then G. Next is su, much easier. One stroke like this, and then one stroke like this. So I'll do that again. First stroke, second stroke, and that's su. And adding that then changes it to zu. Next we have ze. Se is this stroke first, and then this one. So the horizontal with a hook down, and then this rounded square. And you can add that then to change that to ze. And then we have so. So it's kind of like she and G. It's a similar thing. So and then n are going to look similar. So it's so, you draw the line, and then from the top, draw this line downwards. Alright, so that's so. And draw this a bit better, like that. So, and then with that then so. And then the way this is different from n, which you'll learn later, is n comes from the bottom like this. So is more like this, whereas n is more like this. Very subtle, I know. It's easier to see the difference in the printed version. Alright, next is the ta set. So it's the same thing as before. It's the same ta, chi, tsu, te, to. And then ta, this would be chi, this would be zu, te, to. But again, as I talked about before, these two are basically never used. And then specifically with katakana, even if you can make these, you can spell things this way, if you wanted to make those sounds, there are other ways to do it. Right, so we'll go through each one. We'll start with ta. Ta is sort of similar to ku, where you had this and you had this, and then the main difference is you add in this third stroke like this. Ta. So I'll just draw it more compactly because that's how it actually looks. It's like this. It's ta. Draw it again. And then you can add the tak, then change it to da. Next is chi. So with chi, come again sort of like with e, from the top, a little curve down like this. Then your second stroke is flat, coming from the left to the right. So you come from right to the left, then left to the right, and then you draw this curved line. So I'll do it again a little faster. Like that. This is chi. You could add dak then, but it's very uncommon, so this is tsu. Maybe now you can see the difference. The way that I remember it is that she looks up at you, while tsu looks down at you. So with she, you can think of like these lines are more flat and they're angled near the bottom, whereas with tsu, they're more vertical and they're towards the top. And then if I was to like draw heads around them, you can sort of see how the angles of their faces are different. Alright, so let me clear the screen and then just write tsu in isolation. So with tsu, you draw this line first and then this one, whereas with she, if you remember, you did the top one then the bottom one. So the order sort of flipped from left to right. So doing it again, this one, then this one, and then from the top curving down. That's tsu. I'll do it one more time a little faster. Tsu. And just like before, you can make a small tsu to be a sokuon. I think I have a slide for that later, but I am just saying that it works the same way. Next is te. Te is the floating vertical line, slightly longer vertical line underneath it, and then this one curved below. Do it again. Smaller line, bigger line, curve. So that's te, and with that then it becomes te. Next is to. To is pretty simple, vertical line, and then this sort of hand. So vertical line, then the hand, connect it up. Add that, then becomes to. We'll do the na set. So once again, it's just na, ni, nu, ne, and ni. Na is pretty simple, looks like a plus, just curves the line, so horizontal and then the vertical. Do that one more time. Horizontal line, vertical line, that's na. Ni is probably very simple to remember because it's top line, bottom line. But if you remember when we studied numbers, ni was also the word for 2. And in fact, in kanji, this is exactly how you would write the number 2 as well. It's like this. So when I say that katakana are simplified kanji, sometimes it actually just is the kanji. So this might be one that's easier for you to remember because the letter ni is the clue to how to write it. It's ni is 2, there are 2 strokes. This is how you write it. One more time. Top line, bottom line. Next is nu. So nu is this shape and then cut through it. So you might initially think it looks similar to ta. Ta was like this. So you can hopefully see the differences here. Nu is just this sort of 7 curved at the bottom, the line going through it. Okay, next is ne. Ne has 4 strokes. So you have the stem, you have this sort of shape, and then you have this line at the bottom. So if you remember when we wrote su, we wrote it like this, and you've basically just added these on top. So you put the stem, write su in katakana, and then put the line at the bottom. So this is ne. Last is no. No is just from the top, bring a curve down like this. So, if you were writing so, then you'd put this line here and then bring this line down. And if you're writing then you can't use this because you'd have to start from the bottom. So it's so, but without that line. So it's just no. This one's a little weird because it's just a single curved stroke, so it might not look like a complete letter on its own, but it is. Next is the ha set, and then by extension the ba and the pa set. So ha, he, hu, he, ho, except hu, remember, changes to fu. And then these would be ba, bi, bu, be, bo, and these would be pa, pi, bu, pe, po. Alright. So ha is this stroke and then this stroke. So pretty simple. You can just even simplify it to that, but I like to give it a little bit of curve to match the printed version. So ha. And if you learn your kanji, the number 8, hachi, is written like this as well. So ha for hachi. Next is he. He again is this vertical line first, and then this. So let me try that again. I think there was something on my screen. You do the vertical line, then you do this line. Yeah, it's too exaggerated. There we go. This is he. So this line can be flat, but it's nice to angle it up a little bit. And then like that. He. And then remember, with dakten you can make it bi, and with handakten you can make it pi. Next is fu. Fu is the same shape we've been using to make other letters before. It's all one stroke like this. So fu, basically this curved 7 sort of thing. Adding dakten changes it to bu, Handakten changes it to fu. He is exactly the same as it was in hiragana. So, like this. He, you can add dakten, make it be. You can add handakten, make it be. It's exactly the same. No change. So hopefully I don't need to spend too long on it. It's just one stroke. Next is ho. So with ho, basically you draw this sort of plus first. At the bottom there is a haneru, but you can omit it. So like this, and then you add these two. So I'll do that again. Horizontal line, vertical line, you can add the haneru if you want. Doesn't have to be that exaggerated. So like this, 3, 4. And then dakten makes it po, handakten makes it po. So now you know enough katakana to write fubuki. So fubuki. It's going to be like this. So that's fu. Fu by adding the dakten. Ki. Right, next is the ma set. We have ma, mi, fu, me, mo. So ma is this shape, and they intersect it with this line, like this. So it's different from a. A, if you remember, was like this, curving outwards. With ma, you're cutting it inwards. And then also with ma, you kind of want the triangle sort of shape at the top, so it looks like they intersect, whereas with a, you keep the stem short so that it looks more like a P. So, one more time. Ma. Next is mi. Mi is just like that. Three lines from top to bottom. Angle them down a bit, not like the way I drew them first time. Like this. Mi. If you remember when we were studying the days of the week, we said that Mika is, well, I guess it's like this, but if you were to write could also write it like this if you're using the full kanji, because this is 3, so it is san, but it could also be read as mi. We'll cover multiple readings when we talk about kanji. So it's the same 3, mi. That's your hint for 3 lines. So once again, just that, pretty simple. Next is mu. Mu looks like it's 3 strokes in the printed version, but it's actually just 2. It's this one and then that. So you can think of it as like an exaggerated number 4, but cut off. So it's this shape and then angled this way. Do it one more time. I'll try to actually connect these. Next is me. Me is basically write no and then cut across it. I'll do that one more time. Draw the bigger line and cut it with the smaller line. This is me. It's kind of like a curved X. And last is mo. So mo, if you remember the hiragana version, was like this. So it's basically that, but a little squarer. So first line, second line, and then write it like this, and that's more. So instead of curving it back up like this, square it off like that. So the last of the gamers that we have is Mio. And the way you write this is me. Oh. So you can see how it's basically a phonetical spelling of the name. These line up a lot more. It's easier. Alright, on to the asset. So the asset, if you remember with hiragana, same thing. It's just ya, you, and yo. So you have ya, you, yo. There's no yi, and there's no ye. These would just be e and a, respectively, if you ever were going to have those sounds. So ya, you, yo. So ya should look pretty similar to how we used to write it in hiragana. If you remember, in hiragana it was like this. In katakana, a bit more square. It's like that. The same thing, vertical stroke with a hook, and then a vertical line. Sorry, horizontal stroke with hook, vertical line. That's ya. You is one stroke like this, and then a longer stroke like this at the bottom. 2 strokes. So this sort of 7 shape, and then a longer flatter line is you. Now we have yo. Yo is sort of similar to how you wrote ko. You have this 7 shape, and then instead of putting the line at the bottom, you put a line in the middle first, and then you put a line at the bottom. So don't write it like the English numbers or the English letter 3 or number 3 like this. Don't write it like that. It's this sort of 7 shape, middle stroke, and the bottom stroke. And this is yo. Next is the ra set. So ra, ri, ru, re, ro. And important to know, this is where sort of the RL confusion that you might have heard in Japanese manifests itself a lot. Words that use L in English, for example, will probably use an R sound or a Ra sound because the sounds are similar enough in Japanese to where they can't distinguish them. So Ra is basically fu with a line above it. So you draw the line first and like this. And I want to point out this is different from the hiragana u, which was curved. Katakana generally more straight. So this is ra. Next is ri. So first that stroke and then this stroke. You might remember if when we were looking at the hiragana version, I was drawing it like this. This is sort of a simplified version where instead of curving from the top, it skips that thing and just draws like this. But some people write them the same in hiragana. So if you are someone that writes it like this in hiragana, then this is simpler for you. But it's virtually the same shape. It's just this sort of connector line goes away. This is ri. Zu is like that. So different from ha, which was 2 curved lines. The first line is somewhat similar, but the second line comes down sort of straight and bounces up. Ru. Re is basically ru without the first line, so it's just like this. One stroke. So down and bounce out. And finally, ro. So ro is probably the trick to learning how to write kanji that look very square. This is a pattern that you'll probably get used to. So once you start writing more kanji, you'll get used to writing it this way. For now, remember this. So you draw the first vertical line. You draw that 7 shape that we're used to. And then you draw this line. Let me do that again. Draw that 7. And then you draw the bottom line. So do that again. 1, coming down. 2, 3. Even though there are 4 sides to it, it's only 3 strokes. So I'll do it one more time. 1, 2, 3. This is ro. So we have Subaru here. Subaru. Way to do that. Ba is just how it tucked there. And then ru is like this. So here hopefully you can see the actual difference between ha and the ru very clearly when it's written out. And this is Subaru. This is the wa set. So this is wa and this is o. You will basically never see this. So don't worry about it, because if you remember when we were talking about the hiragana, I talked about how this is basically a object marker. It's a particle. You don't see it any other reason. So this o you're basically unlikely to see. In fact, very often you'll probably see this o even if it is a wa sound to start. Or you might even see like this. So it's weird. I'll talk about this coming forward. So this is wa. Wa probably looks similar to u for you. If you remember, u had the stem on top and then comes like this. For wa, you just don't have the stem. So it's this line and this line as a single stroke. That's wa. And then o, just for completeness, is sort of this equal to sign and then the curved line. So top line, middle line, curved line. So this is toa. If you cast your mind back, to is like this, and wa is like this. Okay. Last is n. So yeah, again, let's see it one more time. Write it sort of flatter, bring it from the bottom, as opposed to so, which is more vertical, bring it from the top. So you can kind of see the difference. And again, if you were to draw faces, the angle at which they're looking shows you the difference. So I'll clear out so and just write again. Write it sort of like this, bring it from the bottom to the top. That's which in hiragana was like this. And that's all the characters in katakana. So marin, ma, ri, n. Ma was like this, ri was like this, and now we've just learned n is like this. Marin. So as with hiragana, we can use yon again, which is the small ya, yu, and yo. And it does the same thing where with the G sounds, it changes thing rather than being jia, it becomes ja, ju, jo. And same thing with the chi, it becomes cha, chu, cho. Right? So I just write this one out. In Romaji, this is kya, this is q, and this is kyo. So it's the same thing as it was in hiragana. You can put a smaller version of the ya sounds to modify the consonant before it. We have the sokon. I have an example here. So this is actually the word for pocky, right? This is pocky, but if you were to romanize this, this is actually pocky. Okay. So this is po. This little tso, the sokon on the ki makes it ki. And then you've extended the vowel here, so it's like adding another one. Poki. Right? And then that's another thing. Rather than the way we had it in hiragana, where, for example, if you remember hato. This is how we wrote hato. If you wrote this in katakana, it would be hato. You just use this hyphen to elongate the vowel rather than having to write it out again. Next is how to separate katakana words. So in hiragana words, what's going to tend to happen is you'll use kanji and you'll separate out the hiragana just using for grammatical context. So for the most part, it becomes very clear where the words are separated. And also because they're Japanese words, it's easy for a Japanese speaker to identify where the separation should be. With a katakana word, since it's from a foreign origin, it's quite likely that they've never seen this word before, and they don't know that this is the breakpoints in the words and that they're separate words. So they use this sort of dot as like a space marker, since they don't actually use spaces, right? So if we figure out what this is saying, right? So this is hit, little tsu on to, so hit to. Treat it as a space, so we leave a gap. Po, I, n, tsu. Hitto point, which is hit points. And then you could imagine if you had a list of more katakana words that you'd get another dot and then your words here, like this. Next, we have some sounds that katakana uses to make sounds that you don't find in Japanese, but you do find in other languages that they would use. And the way to look at this is look at what the sound is, and you can use the thing. So we'll start with these. For example, I think this is easier to figure out first. So we have fu plus a becomes fa. Fu plus i becomes fi. Fu plus e becomes fe. And fu plus o becomes fo. Right? And then, so for example, on Twitter, you might see them say follow me. And then the way they would write follow is they would write foro, like this. So you can modify just to get the consonant sound, which you don't have. You can modify a sound that does have the consonant and then add the vowels in a small letter to get the thing you wanted. You look here, for example, this one is te plus i. And so that becomes T. So if you remember, we don't have a actual mora for T. you write it, it becomes chi, right? You get this. This is chi. So if you wanted the T sound, this is the way you do it. Te plus E becomes T. And then same thing, adding dak then changes it to the, which again you didn't have a way to do. And then this, you can do the same thing to get the tu sound rather than modifying tsu. You take to plus u, and you get tu, and with the dak then it becomes tu. Down here is basically ways to get j and she sounds. These are the ways to get your we and we sounds, right? Is by doing it as ui and ue, and then just sort of saying it quickly becomes we, we. And your top row is to make V sounds. So you have va, vi, vu, ve, vo. So basically the point is you don't need to figure all of these out right now. The important thing is that you can make sounds that are not present in Japanese by modifying the consonant sounds, or in some case a vowel sound, with another sound to approximate the sound phonetically, which is how you use katakana. It's just phonetically. And then what I would recommend doing is, if you are subscribed to all of the Hololive girls, just go through and try to read their names. Some part of their name, typically their last name, which they write first, would be in kanji. Don't worry about that part yet. But the given name, the name that we call them by, will be in either hiragana or katakana for the most part, except for Roboko. All of them are in hiragana or katakana. So now that you have all of their names, you should be able to read them. You know the names, so you know what you're expecting to see. Just that helps you remember the actual mora that go along with it and attach the sounds to a shape. Also, if you look at stream titles now, the games will probably be written in katakana, especially if it's not a Japanese game. So for example, the Henry Stickmin collection or something like that, that's a game that doesn't have a Japanese name. So they would actually just write the name in katakana to indicate that these are foreign names. And then also probably the thing that you're going to see the most commonly is, you might see this. Which is hororaibu, and that's how they write Hololive. So let's talk about some grammar again. Come back to grammar. So we talked about verbs and conjugating verbs before. I'll introduce you to iru and aru. So iru and aru are the same verb in English. It is something to exist. So whether it is to be or to have or whatever, the point is that it is there. Iru is used for animate things, and then aru is used for inanimate things. Apart from which, they basically have the same way to use them. The only difference would be whether you're talking about something that lives or something that doesn't live. And then the other thing is that they do have kanji ways to write them, but these kanji versions are going to be very rare because iru and aru are such short verbs that it's easier to just write them in hiragana. Iru is an iru-eru verb, which is good for us. It would be very confusing if it wasn't. And then aru is a regular verb, which if you're familiar with a different system, iru is a ru verb and aru is an u verb. Which, I can very quickly then remind you. So the pattern for iru-eru verbs was drop the ru. So it would be i plus your verb ending. Imasu, imasen, imashita, imasen deshita. Aru is change the ru to a ri. So it would be ari plus your verb ending. So arimasu, arimasen, arimashita, arimasen deshita. So let's use them in a sentences. So we have dore ga imasu ka. Dore was who. So who, imasu is existence, ka is a question. So who is there, right? And then you have the response is Kenji to Yumi ga imasu. So Kenji to was and, if you remember, and then Yumi is a name. So Kenji and Yumi are there. And you can drop there when you're doing a translation to English because you want it to sound natural. So who's there? Kenji and Yumi are. And you can see using kanji how basically everything simplifies to the kanji name. Here's another one. We use aru instead of iru. Nani ga arimasu ka? What do you have, basically? So it's what is there, but it's also what do you have. It could be either one. And the response is pizza ga arimasu. I have pizza. And again, the color coding hopefully is helping you out. So let's use all the knowledge we have from grammar and start putting things together. Anata no hon wa asoko ni arimasu. Anata no is possessive modifying of anata, so it's you possessively, your. Hon was book. Asoko is over there, if you remember the sort of spheres of influence. Asoko is outside the range for both speaker and listener. And ni is the place marker, so asoko ni is to say there. And then arimasu is it is there, and it's an inanimate object, so it's arimasu, not imasu. So your book is over there. Anata no hon wa asoko ni arimasu. Next we have another way to use to. So we learned how to use to as the word to mean and that you could say that you had a list of objects. You could say A to B to C and so on. And you'd have to say to in between each of them. A different way to use to is to say with someone. So it's the same word again, right? It's the same grammatical meaning as and, but in English the meaning changes. So the way that you would say it is noun to and then whatever the rest of your sentence is, and it would be with this noun. So we have an example. Dore to Tokyo ni ikimasu ka? So here it's not who and Tokyo you went, it's with who, right? Dore to, the translation makes more sense to say with whom did you go to Tokyo. Ikimasu, remember, iku was to go, so ikimasu is will go or are going. So with whom are you going or will you go to Tokyo? And then kyou wa Risa-chan to ikimasu. Demo ashita wa Misa-kun to or Masa-kun to ikimasu. So kyou wa is today. Risa-chan is a name. To with ikimasu. So today I will go with Risa-chan. Demo, but ashita wa tomorrow Masa-kun to with Masa-kun ikimasu. I'll go with Masa-kun. So translating that to English, who are you going to Tokyo with? Today I'm going with Risa-chan, but tomorrow I'll go with Masa-kun. And notice that this ikimasu changed tense from I'm going to I will go in the English because of the implication of ashita being tomorrow. You change it to future tense because you know that they are referring to a future event. And then here you can see kanji names. These are very hard to guess immediately, so don't worry about that. One of the difficulties with retaining katakana is that you're not going to see it as frequently as you see hiragana and eventually kanji, because as you'd expect, most Japanese sentences will have Japanese words in them, and foreign loan words are not common to see. So it might be hard to remember these katakana, maybe a couple of weeks from now, a few months from now, if you're not seeing them as much. Luckily, because we watch Holo Live, we are more likely to see them than most people are. Just being on the internet generally means that you're more likely to see people using slang, and slang tends to use katakana as well. If you follow HoloLive members on Twitter, you'll see it a lot as well, because they will tend to use words like and follow in katakana, and that can be pretty useful too. So what I would encourage you to do is, if you see katakana, which hopefully you'll recognize a word is katakana, try to read it, because it's going to sink in better that way. And over time, you sort of remember, these complex katakana sounds that you can use to make sounds that are not in Japanese. Those will start to sink in better as you see them in context. So next lesson, we're going to review everything that we've studied so far. But what I'm going to try to do is I'll try to find clips and song lyrics, mostly from the HoloLive sphere, that we can use to put into context what we've learned. I'm assuming that since most of you are attending these classes because you're interested in following along on HoloLive streams or anime, I'll try to find clips from relatively sort of associated material. That way, it's the most relevant to whatever it is that you're consuming. All right. Thanks for coming, everyone. And yeah, I'll see you on the next lesson, where we'll review everything that we've covered so far using interesting clips.